Today we come to this place and this Torah portion, which is called Parashat Tetzaveh, in chapters 28 to 31, I think it is in the book of Exodus. And Parashat Tetzaveh is so unique in the entire Torah, in fact, the entire Bible, because it gives us the pinnacle of what God expects of us. Now, reading and just passing through the simple verses in the Pasuk, you will not come to this conclusion only just by reading it, because the overall picture is not visible until it is shown to somebody. So it's a very unique and very interesting Torah portion, friends. It's very easy to get lost in the verbiage of what needs to be done and how it needs to be done and how it needs to be made, and all the instructions are there. All the instructions are given. It's so easy to get lost in this verbiage. For a common person who just wants to read it, he's just going to close the Bible and say, okay, this is it. I mean, okay, I understand that God is interested in dressing up Aharon like a king, and he's told somebody to make him royal with splendor and put it on him, and he does his work. No, but we need to delve deeper into this, into what's happening exactly. What is the pinnacle of what God is trying to do with it? Okay, if we do not understand the Torah in that context, then there's no point in what we're doing. Absolutely. So take your Bibles. Let's go. Let's jump to Parashat Tetzaveh, chapter 28. Let's open to chapter 28. Okay, here's my Bible. Chapter 28 of Shmot. How many of you have read this Torah portion before? How many of you have actually gone through this and tried to make sense out of this Torah portion? The Torah portion starts with the last two verses of chapter 27. And then it moves on to 28 and 29 and 30. Okay. So please open with me to the end of chapter 27. And as an introduction, let me just introduce, we've done this before, but I just want to recollect everybody's what we're doing. Yes, Aileen, you have something to say? Aileen? You put your hand up.
You asked whether, yes, you asked whether we have read this part. I indicated yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Fine. So we'll read from chapter 27, verse 20 and 21, I think. 20 and 21. It says, Ve'ata tetzaveh et ben Israel vaychu elecha shemen zait zach katit la meor lehaula ner tamid. And you will command the children of Israel, you will instruct the children of Israel that they should take for you clear olive oil, crushed for illumination, to light a lamp, tamid, constantly, perpetually. No, it does not mean that it has to be lit 24 hours. So when you use the word tamid, it means perpetually means at a given point of time, but it has to be consistently. The right word is consistently. So every evening till every morning, I think Ithamar and this one were given the role, or the high priest was given the role. Sorry, the high priest, the Kohen HaGadol, that's Aaron the high priest. He would go inside and he would nurture the lamp. And I think we've done this before about nurturing the lamp inside each one of us. So that should recollect it mentally. Now, in the succeeding verses of this thing, why does God instruct Aaron to nurture the lamps? And when he's nurturing the lamps, what is the succeeding result of nurturing those lambs and what needs to be done. So then we move on to chapter 28. And then God tells Aaron, he says, and you bring near. He says, Ve'ata hakerev elecha, to yourself. Elecha et Aharon. Achicha, your brother, ve'et b'nei ito matok b'nei Israel, from the midst of the children of Israel. Matok b'nei Israel. You will bring your brother close from the matok, okay, from the word tok, which means in the midst of. You will bring him from, you will collect him from the midst of Israel. That means from the entire house of Israel, from the midst, you will pluck him out and you will bring him and you will make him approach for this consecrated duty. It is the role of Moshe Rabbeinu to take him out and to bring him for this duty, so that he will be a Kohen for me, he will be a priest for me. Aaron, Nadav and Abihu, Elazar and Itamar, the sons of Aaron. And then verse 2 says something very interesting. It says, you shall make garments of sanctity for Aaron your brother, for glory and for splendor. For glory and for splendor. Huh? So let's read this in the Hebrew. It says verse 2. Okay. The asita, from the word asa, and you will produce, you will make, okay, you will bring forth. Ve asita bigdei. Bigdei, the word beged, which means actually arrays of clothes. Bigdei is clothes, costume basically. To dress is labush, but bigdei, from the word beged, is clothing. Okay. Ve asita bigdei kadosh, holy clothing. Le Aharon akicha le kavod, for glory, u la kafarta, and for beauty, or for honor. For para is for beauty. Tifara, for le tifara is for beauty. Now, God is saying, from the midst of the children of Israel, you will remove Aaron, and you will consecrate him to me, and you will make some really amazing clothing, so that there will be honor and glory and beauty conferred upon him for this. Now, if you're looking at this in a very physical sense, then you're just going to pass through and you're going to move ahead and say, oh, what a wonderful thing. You say how beautiful Aaron would have looked like in all those amazing garments. But why is God instructing Aaron to wear garments? What is so special about these garments? That is something we need to dig deep, see, understand, read. Now, in a very short way, why does a person dress up? What is so important, or what makes a person enthusiastic about dressing up? Does anyone know? Most humans, in fact, everybody likes to dress up, right? Especially the ladies. They love to dress up, right? A guy can just put on a shirt, a coat, a pant, a decent shoe, just comb his hair properly, and he's done with. But ladies, they really need to dress up, right? So dressing up is not exactly, it involves a physical act, but it's actually a deeply spiritual meaning. It's a deeply spiritual instinct in every human being. It's not in an animal. Try dressing up an animal will shake it off and it'll run away from you. It doesn't need to be, doesn't need to dress up. But a human being needs to dress up. So the reason why a human being needs to dress up is, one is that in his soul, he deeply needs, he feels a vulnerability. He feels a kind of shame. And that shame is coming down from the Garden of Eden. You cannot go out into this world just walking absolutely stark naked. I mean, that's a madman. Why do we consider a person that mad? Is because you can't expose yourself. There is a certain amount of inherent uh, shame in a human being to be exposed, right? So dressing comes from a very spiritual place. And I think this is exactly what God is trying to accomplish. He's giving humanity a certain kind of dressing. And he's saying, not only will you dress, but you'll dress beautifully. So that's one way of looking at it. So that means you will cover all that shame and all that which you're feeling from inside. But if God removes the shame, if it removes all that, your dressing will not only be to cover yourself, but it will be for glory and for honor. Now, I've always wondered, right? When you're young, when all of us are young, we run towards fashion. We want to buy the Reeboks and we want to buy the Adidas and we want to, buy the Clarks, or we want to go for the Armanis and Ralph Lauren and all these big names, right? I remember I got a soft spot for for perfumes and for listen. So I like my Armani. I love my Armani and my Big Boss, Calvin Klein. So, but why do we go for brands? Uh, why do we reach out for fashion? Now, can fashion be compared to Bigdei Kehunah? Can we really say that, modern day people want to look good and they do fashion and they wear the silks and the satins and the leathers and all these great things and make a human being look like a model and make them really look amazing. But why is that different and why is the Bible different? You see, the fashion world also is trying to copy the Bible. It's compensating for the basic need of a human being to cover himself. And not only to cover himself, but also to feel beautiful, to look beautiful, and to look good. So it goes beyond just covering yourself. Whereas God here is also telling Aaron and Moses and to instruct all the children of Israel, not only to cover themselves, but hey, listen, you want to cover yourself, fine, but at least look good in it. But this is God's form. This is what Hashem wants us to do because Hashem is approved of it. So that's the basic intent. Now, on the practical side of it, if we read in context, we must understand that God is speaking to the children of Israel, to the Jewish people. That is point number one, and it all has to be within context of the covenant. Now, the children of Israel themselves are called Mamlaket Goy Kadosh, a kingdom of holy people. Mamlaket Goy Kadosh, that means a people of priests appointed for God. All Jewish people, to some level, have been appointed to be Goy Kadosh, a holy nation, but Mamlaket, a priesthood, a royal priesthood, okay, that was their appointment, that was their choice God gave them. So therefore, when you're reading Tetzaveh and you're reading about Bigdei Kehunah and you're talking about adorning yourself with garments, God is trying to dress the children of Israel. He's trying to dress them with honor and with glory. Keep this in mind. You shall bring forward your brother Aaron with his sons, as we read, to serve me as priests, Aaron, Nadab, Avihu, Eleazar, and Tamar, the sons of Aaron. Then it says, Ve'asita bigdei kadosh le'Aaron akicha le'kavod u'le'tifarta, for glory and for beauty. Now, when we look at a human being, Maybe I've done this, I've spoken to you about this. There are the outside things of a human being and there are the inside things. The inside thing, before we come to it, is also equally important as the outside. The outside is called Kizinut. It's called Kizinut. It's got to do with the outside, the outer attributes, the demeanor of a person. How a person behaves, how he speaks, his mannerisms, that's about his outside thing. And it's also called Ma'ad in Hebrew. Ma'ad, from his demeanor, this is how a person is, how he behaves, and this is who he is. You can, even if you blindfold yourself and if that person comes in front of you, by his movements, mannerisms, by speech, you will recognize that person. That's his demeanor. But inferring and trying to understand his pinimiyut, the pinimiyut is the inside of the person. So this is what Paul basically keeps talking about, the inner man. The word pinimiyut. The word pinimiyut comes from the word panim, which is face, and also pinimiyut also is also called a pearl. Okay, so the pearl is like a pearl that is hidden in a shell. You open the shell, you find the pearl. That's the inner portion of the shell. So we're dealing with two things now: the outer demeanor of a person, which is chazinut, and the inner attributes of a person called pinimiyut, or the right word in the Hebrew is midot, attributes. How is a person from inside? Is he loving? Is he kind? Is he caring? Is he considerate? Does he listen? Does he doesn't listen? Is he arrogant? Is he prideful? Is he violent? What are his attributes? What are his midot? How is a person? How does he live his life from inside? I can see him from the out, but his inside is it's a different story altogether. So therefore, when you look at a person and you look at the way a person dresses, his dressing sense has to reflect either his outward demeanor, his kizinut, or for sure it has to reflect his inner pinimiyut. If a person is sorrowful and solemn from inside, his dressing will show automatically. If a person is quirky and jumpy and joyful from inside, he will wear the brightest colors. He will be, looking towards the fashion and trendy, and all these things will happen. So you can look at a person and say, okay, we can understand what this person is. Now, it takes a lot of perception to look at a person, to understand how he dresses, talks, his demeanor, and then you move on to his pinimiyut to find out what is happening inside. So basically, your dressing sense has to come from the inside of you, from your pinimiyut. When it comes from inside of you, it reflects the inner man. And if your inner man is rectified, then your dressing also should be rectified. But if your inner man is rectified and you dress some other way, there is no harmony between the pinimiyut and the kizinut. So now we're dealing with the disharmony of what's happening from the inside and the outside of a person. So therefore, being shalom, having wholeness, having completeness in life, is to have a perfect tiferet, beauty. Now this is where we get the word tiferet, beauty, for glory, and for tiferet, honor or beauty. The word tiferet in Hebrew from the word parat, which means to balance out. So beauty from biblical point of view, from Hebrew point of view, it is simply means the harmony of everything. That is real beauty. You can take the most disastrous looking things, put them into harmony, and they will all look beautiful in a harmony. But individually, they may look the most horrible. You may take the most ugly looking stones, set them in an order, and put them and create an abstract art and say, oh, how beautiful it looks. Man, you've taken something, you made something beautiful out of it. Because it's harmony. Each portion and part is harmony with each other. That is biblical beauty. So when God is saying, you will dress Aaron up for Kavod with Tiferet, you will teach Aaron, first of all, to kindle the lamp, that he will elevate himself. And with him, he will teach others to elevate themselves as an Olah offering. And in the process of that now, you will teach Aaron and create Labush, Bigdei Kehunah, priestly garments for him to wear. Wow. Now we're looking at not only a physical kind of garments, but we're looking at a spiritual angle to this. We're looking at the soul. Our soul needs to be dressed in this. When the outer midot, when the outer demeanor of a person is not harmonizing with his internal midot attributes, then there is a problem with that person. So, as an understatement, all of humanity are facing this crisis. A person thinks something else with his mind, and he speaks something else with his mouth. He's burning with rage from inside in his heart and his mind, but he speaks sweet words of goodness from his mouth. There is deceit, there is lies, there's so many things. There is no harmony from the inside to the out. And the Bible is telling us how to deal with this, friends. Very clear. You know, Yeshua kept warning the people about this. Now, I'm looking at this in a very different angle, and you should too. In Matthew chapter 23, let's read Matthew chapter 23. Let's try and open this out. Matthai, Besurah Hamattai. Kuf Gimel 23, and we will read verse 25 and 26. See what he says to the scribes and Pharisees. Now he is rebuking the scribes and the Pharisees, right? This is what's happening here. But look at Yeshua's words out here, because this is going to change your perspective in everything. He says over there, woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, Sophrim wa Purishim. Hypocrites, Yola. Why is he calling them hypocrites? Not that he hates them, but he hates because they don't know what they're doing. Or they know they're following an evil way of life, but they're not rectifying that harmony that is supposed to be inside of them. He says, you hypocrites, for you you hypocrites, for you make clean the outside, the kizinut of the cup and of the plate, but within you are full of extortion and excesses. Let's read this in Hebrew. Oy lachem hasoferim vehapurishim ha tanafim ki matkarim atem pene hakus v'hakzarat v'mikutz v'token male gezel uparitzut. It says, you're full of gizel and robbing and stealing from inside. You're burning and bursting with anger from inside because you are not rectifying the pininut, your inner man, but your external is beautiful and glorious. So typically, what we've studied in our circles of when we've done our Bible studies, wherever we've grown up, in whichever church, we've learned to bash the Pharisees because, they are Pharisees, they were bad. But let's take issue at hand. What is Jesus actually doing with it? And he attacks them not because he loves attacking them or because he hates the Pharisees. It's because he's trying to dress them properly. Then verse 26 says, "Thou blind Pharisees, cleanse that which is within first, the cup and the platter, that the outside of them may be clean also." Now, keeping this in mind, Yeshua is trying to dress them. He's trying his utmost best to dress the children of Israel because they were all called to be Mamlakhet Goy Kadosh, all called to be priests and high priests of the God Most High. But they were not doing that. That's not what they were doing. Okay. See what he says. He just puts so many things into perspective. And the reason why is because the inner man and the outward man is not matching. The midot is not matching with the demeanor. So introspect, look at yourself and say, is my demeanor, my outward appearance matching with my inner being? Is my inner being rectified? If my inner being is not rectified and I've got something else going on the outside, I'm in serious trouble. When the Oel Moed stood and the high priest used to go in to minister unto the Lord, many of them went into the holy place and they died. They had to be pulled out with ropes. You know why? Because of the same reason. Because they were not fit. Their existence was not clean, was not pure, and which is not giving harmony before the Lord. That disharmony between them, God abhors the inner man and the outer man. Completely abhors that, friends. Now, let's go a little ahead in Exodus chapter 28. Okay. So 28 is basically, he instructs them about the 8 garments or the 8 things that a high priest needs to be attired with, labush, and how it needs to do, how it needs to be made, and all that stuff. Let's jump a little ahead and see and let's look at these 8 things, what they are actually about. In chapter 29, now he gives the order of how the high priest has to be dressed. That is also very special, friends. Very, very special. So look at the 8 things, okay? And then we're going to add 2 more a little later. The first thing is a katonet, which is a fringed garment. The fringed garment, it's basically, it's just like an innerwear, much like how a lady wears a petticoat from inside, an inner garment. That's basically what a katonet is. So it's something that is the very basic need of being covered. It just covers your nakedness. That's it. Okay. Then there is the miknasim, which is the underwear, which covers the private parts of a human being. So in the case of the high priest, they were like, these pants or these breeches, which covered his the private parts of the. Then came the mitznefet, which was the turban around the head. Then the avnit. The avnit was a sash, which was covered, and the sash was covered from his solar plexus, from the top of his stomach. It was not on his waist. So biblically, the avnit covered his solar plexus and his entire abdomen region. That's what the avnit was. And by the way, that avnit was 32 spans long. 32 spans long. And the number 32 is the number Lev, Lamed, and Beth, which means heart. So therefore, that sash meant something. I'll come to that. Then there was the Koshen or the breastplate. The breastplate which had the 12 stones, okay, Sushan stones of the 12 tribes. Then the ephod, the kind of the holding shirt which held on the breast, on the male, you had that holding kind of shirt which had the slots to hold that breastplate. That was called the ephod. Then the male was the blue garment on top of the katonet. The blue garment, it was a complete blue garment, and below the blue garment were alternating the pomegranates and the bells. So the male was basically a one-piece kind of thing, where it had an opening only for the head, and it would just fit over a body. It had no shoulders or sleeves. It just came, and there was only an opening for the head, and put it on. It was a blue garment, and then over the katanet, and then the sash would go upon it. Then the turban would be put. Okay. And then the last was the tzit. The tzit was the headband on top, on the forehead of the high priest, where it was written, "To the Lord, La Adonai." Okay. These were the 8 things that was given to be put for the high priest. Now, each of the 8 things covers a certain area of a human being. It's meant to rectify a human being, or meant to make a statement that this human being is rectified and is in complete wholeness from the inside, and therefore he is allowed to wear beauty and glory and honor. Therefore, the high priest would come into the holy place to minister unto the Father and give the perfect korban. Okay, friends, very, very important to understand this. Once we understand this, then we will be able to understand what the book of Ivrit or Hebrews tells us from beginning to end in the New Testament. It's not so simple that the role of a high priest has to just be high priest. Oh, he's a priest. He has to give his offerings. He has to take the blood, collect it, and come into the high priest, sprinkle the blood, and the sins of Israel are over and done with. It's not about that, my friends. It's really not about that. It's about the rectification of the high priest himself. And I told you before, numerous amounts of high priests went inside and they died because they were not in perfect harmony and glory before God. And they died in that holy place, and they had to be pulled out. Hundreds of the high priests have died there. They were literally scared to go into the holy place once a year. On the day of which year? On which day was it? On Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, they would go inside, sprinkle the blood, come out. But imagine, to go inside that place was also a preparation. He had to be separated for 7 days. No one would meet him. No one would talk to him. He would be completely isolated. In fact, two priests were appointed for this duty on the day of Yom Kippur. If you all know this. Both of them were separated in separate chambers. There was no contact to the world, no speaking to the world, nothing, absolutely nothing. And they were just brought out on Yom Kippur to take the blood, prepare themselves, and to go into the Holy of Holies, sprinkle the blood and come out. If they made a mistake, or if the high priest made a mistake, he would die. Just imagine if it was your turn to be the high priest that year, and you would be shivering to complete that role for that year. And the people would be looking at you and saying, "Oh God, if the high priest makes a mistake, we're all dead. That's it. We're all finished, over with." So we're dealing with purity and impurity. We're dealing with Taharot and Tameh. This is what we're dealing with. Nothing else, friends. But the rectification of a human being comes if we look at these priestly garments. What these priestly garments signify in a human being? What does it mean to wear on these priestly garments? So the breeches or the miknasim, the underwear which the high priest to pull on into, that was the first thing that he used to put on, the breeches. Okay. And tighten the waist, the nadi, the breeches, and it resembled and it stood for rectification of sexual immorality because it covered his private parts. Makes sense now, isn't it? After he puts that on, then he puts on the katonet. The the katonet was something that much like you have these inside banyans which we have, these white banyans which we used to get. I know I used to wear a banyan when I was a child. I hate them now. I can't wear anything inside. Those white banyans we used to get. Okay, so the banyan now is a katan. But it's a small miknasim. Those days they used to wear miknasims right till down, like a banyan right till down, and that covered basically the nudity of a person. If you remove that, the person would be absolutely nude except for his breeches. Okay. So that would go on. That was miknasim, and the katonet. And the katonet stood for misdeeds, wrong actions, anger, and even murder. The rectification of that was the katonet. Now, if you remember, in the story of Yosef, when his brothers saw this dreamer coming to him, they all planned what to do with him. They said they came him, they brought him close, they slapped him around, pushed him, whacked him, mistreated him, ill-treated him. And then they took the favorite garment that his father, Jacob, had made for him. And what was the name of that garment? It was Katonet Pasim. That inner garment of beauty that Jacob had made for him specifically, the garment of stripes, that Katonet stripes, they had taken that and they had robbed him of that. And they slapped him and they threw him and they put him into the pit. They took that Katonet Pasim, from where we get the word Pesach, okay, and they dipped it in the blood of a goat and they gave it to the father and saying, your son is dead. Look at this. So what did they do to Joseph actually? They stripped him of his glory and beauty that was given to him. And they made him naked. They actually made him naked. So just pick this picture of him. What was the act of taking that Katonet Pasim? Anger, violence. They wanted to murder him also. They wanted to kill him also. Then after that, then goes on the Me'il, full blue robe. The full blue robe that is now, once you put on the blue Me'il or the mail, in French it's called mail, mail. So in Middle Ages, a mail was a garment that was used to protect, warriors. You have this chain link kind of mails where these warriors used to fight with swords used to have. That's a mail. So this mail, from the same word mail, it was put upon them, and now this person was actually dressed. But he was dressed to be in his home. He could walk around, do things in his home, and he was a dressed person. So that was a mail. But below the mail, you had the pomegranates and you had the bells. Now, what purpose did the pomegranates and bells serve? If you read chapter 29, it tells you that whenever the high priest would enter into the holy place, these bells and the pomegranates would rub against each other and it would ting, ding, ting, ding. It would, chime and make noises. And that is something. Okay, let's read that portion in chapter 29. See what it says again. He would take this, and when he would enter into, just before he entered into the holy and holy place, those bells would sound. And the bells would sound only because that would intimate his entry into the holy place, to the angelic presence and the Shekinah glory of God that dwelt in the Holy of Holies. So the angelic presence that guarded that mercy seat would know that the high priest was approaching. And there and there, they would evaluate the high priest. If the high priest was ready and in harmony with his Pinimut and Chisinut, and if he was righteous, completely righteous, and he was worthy to wear those garments of glory and honor, he would come inside and his life would be spared. If not, he would fall dead inside and they would have to pull him out. And the bells also gave intimation to the divine presence and to the angelic presence. But it also signifies that you just cannot go into the holy and holies. When you come to somebody's house, you ring the bell, right? Hello, is anyone home? I'm ringing the bell. Someone hears the bell and says, okay. Comes to the door and says, okay, please come in now. I allow you to come into my house. So that's it. The high priest had to intimate his presence, that he desires to come in and draw close to the mercy seat of God, friends. That was the main reason for the bells and the pomegranates. So that was the Me'il. So what did the Me'ils basically cover? What was the significance of the Me'il? It covered evil speech, Lashon Hara, and the Me'il sometimes also had the collar of them. It never had a collar exactly, but it had a piece that would actually come over like this and cover the mouth. If you've noticed, many people in the Middle East, especially the Iranians, the women have that cover to the mouth. And in ancient Middle Ages, you find many of the nuns and the priests also having that mouth cover. That was all part of the Me'il. The Me'il. That mouth cover signified, no speech, evil speech, Lashon Hara, all the impurities that come by speech. So if he is entering the Holy of Holies by committing evil speech, then he did not deserve wearing the Me'il. And if he wore the Me'il and there was disharmony in his being, those bells would ring while he was walking in and he would fall in and he'd fall dead in the holy place. After that, then the ephod would be used. The ephod was basically like the outer tunic that held the breastplate or the koshen. Okay, it was like a vest, like much like you have these police wear these vests, bulletproof vests. That's what the ephod was about. So that ephod was there. Mounted on the ephod was the breastplate with the rings and the blue cords, chain link blue cords. And on that breastplate were the 12 stones. And inside the things were the pouches for the Urim and the Thummim, the black stone and the white stone. So what would the ephod do? The ephod covered basically it reminded the high priest and it stood for the rectification for Avodah Zarah, for idol and strange worship before God. Avodah Zarah or evil worship, simple as that, nothing else. Worshipping a strange God or idol. So idol worship, basically idolatry. Then the breastplate, mounted on that was the breastplate. Mounted on that was the breastplate, and the breastplate now had the 12 stones, and the breastplate or the koshen stood for justice. That the high priest would practice absolute equity, equitability, and justice and righteousness between every human being of the tribe among the children of Israel. And last of all was the seat. La Adonai made a pure gold, one piece tied with blue cords, and that whatever that faced, it sanctified that thing which came was offered to God. So it was used that if you came to the high priest and you gave something as a tithe, as an offering, or as a korban, that thing sanctified that matanot. It was the brazenness and the purified the consecrated things of God. Then the turban, the mitznafet. The turban signified salvation and signified kabad, chokmah bina da'at, which is the seat of salvation, and also deals with the rectification of pride, worldly pride. From chokmah bina da'at, you have the turban that signifies that things. So all these 8 things were given for glory and for honor because Aaron was supposed to be rectified in all these areas in perfect harmony between his inner self and his outer man. Therefore, he could wear this for glory and honor, and he could come into the holy place and minister unto God. When you look at all this, and you see the pinnacle of what a human being is supposed to be, the absolute level of purity and a walk of what God has asked us to do is all out here. Therefore, this portion in the book of Exodus is of such high level of Torah that you can sit for the rest of your lives and just meditate on each thing of the Bigdei Kehunah. What is the rectification? What does one thing mean? Other thing mean? Now, if you think this is irrelevant for us, like most people in Christianity think, okay, all this is relevant for us. It's got nothing to do with us. Turn with me to the book of Ephesians. Let's go to chapter 6 and let's read from there. And let's try and, find out what exactly is happening with it. Let's grasp the entirety of this. Book of Ephesians, we go to chapter 6. Wonderful. Praise God. Ephesians chapter 6. Verse 11 onwards. Now, Paul puts this into a very practical concept for all of us. What does he say? Okay, he says, verse 11. Start from 10 onwards. He says, finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his Gevurah. In the power of his Gevurato. Okay. For put on the whole armor of God. Put on the full armor of God that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. Verse 12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers, and against rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Where are these high places? It's all in the high places that you are traveling inside of you. You're elevating yourself from inside, and you're moving up into a high-speed elevator into heaven. It's all inside of you, friends. This is who you're dealing with. Your rectification has to be inside of you. Therefore, Take unto you the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. Stand therefore with your loins, the sash, right? Gird about with truth, and having the breastplate of, what do we say? Sadaqah, righteousness. Paul is quoting, he knows, see, friends, Paul knows his Torah very, very well, friends. And what you and me study today, just on the very surface level of Paul's understanding of Torah. He knows what he's talking about. He says, wear a sash, okay, with truth, because that covers the heart. And your heart, if you entertain truth from there, Avneet is dealing with truth and thoughts around the middle of your body. So basically, your heart is your middle portion of your body. It's not your physical heart. It's a middle portion of your body. If there's truth over there and your thoughts arise from there, your heart is pumping pure blood. The moment you allow evil thoughts, your blood starts getting tainted and contaminated with impure blood. And that spreads all over the body. Anger, deceit, all, and that blood is getting more and more and more impure with every evil thing. Go, gird your loins about with truth, your avneet, and having the breastplate of righteousness. That means with everybody around you, you treat life and people with equity and with justice. Righteousness. The breastplate, the kosher. Above all, taking the shield of faith, wherein you shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked, and take the helmet, the turban, misnafet, of salvation. Remember what we said, and the sword of the Spirit, which is the will of God. Praying always with prayer and supplication and spirit. So he's also talking about that, but he talks about two more things out here. Okay, he talks also about the sword of the Spirit, which is the Gevurah, which came to empower people, which is New Testament, and the feet shod with the gospel of shalom, of peace. Now, this is because this covers everything. The feet shod with the gospel of peace means your body is in perfect harmony. You are completely shalom because your pinimiyut and kiziniyut is in perfect harmony. If you're feeling something in your heart, you're wearing it on the outside. And we're still talking about spiritual garments, my friends. We're still talking about spiritual garments. Helmet of salvation, the sword of the Spirit, shield of faith, breastplate of righteousness, truth. He's talking about all the Bigdei Kehunah, almost everything of the Bigdei Kehunah, but he's putting it in New Testament kind of context and giving it to us, friends. And Paul knows what he's saying. So, two things are added. From 8, 2 things are added now, and makes it 10 complete. Completely 10. Rectification, salvation, which in the brains, Chokmah Bina Da'at, La Adonai, purification of your Korban, or whatever you bring in the front. Truth from your heart in your waist. Breastplate of righteousness, your Me'il, Lashon Hara, your ephod. All this put together is your full armor of God, friends, and then you're able to enter into that holy place and present yourself before God. This Bigdei Kehunah has no price tag to it. You cannot put a price tag to it, friends. And I think this is exactly what Jesus was warning the scribes and the Pharisees. He's saying, you're putting a price tag to what you're wearing. But wear the right garments. If you do not wear the right garments, how are you going to enter into the holy place? Now, when we look and we read the book of Hebrews, you will realize what the writer in the book of Hebrews is saying about the high priest going into the Holy of Holies and doing what he must for the rest of humanity. He talks about Yeshua, going in there in perfect harmony for the salvation of this world, making a path forward for all of us, friends. Therefore, rising it up and rising this world and elevating this world back to the Father, friends. So, friends, Havrin, there's a lot to learn from Old Testament as well as the New Testament. There's a lot to bring into focus and understanding in everything. If you think that the New Testament is diversely different from the Old, then you're completely mistaken. It has to stand on the strength of the Old Testament. The theology, the Torah, the instructions, everything has come from the Old. Nothing absolutely is new, friends. When you all go home tonight, I want you all to read Parashat Tetzaveh. Put everything in order. Write it down. Write your thoughts down. See the order of the Bigdei Kehunah, the priestly garments. And remember the things which I told you about. What is the rectification for each one of those things? Then we can all be like priests and high priests before the Father. Keep this in mind, friends. Okay, so wonderful having all of you all. Shabbat Shalom to all of you all. Wonderful day. Wonderful. Have a wonderful weekend. Shalom.